Delighted to be joined now by Declan Considine, renowned figure in the soccer world in Limerick and in Ireland, especially at junior level. Declan, thanks for joining us. We'll start off, I suppose, from the very start, really, and your schoolboy career. I know you started off with Granville Rangers, if my sources are correct. What was it like starting out with the club back all those years ago?
Look, I suppose Granville will always be very, very close to my heart. You had Billy Green there, was one of the founder members. Margaret, his wife, Dom and Molly, togging out at the back of a shop, having to walk down to Childers Road in all conditions to play matches, It started off at under 10s. We were 6. But it was even back then, some very, very good players playing with the club, Granville at that time. Only 74 houses as well. Paul O'Donnell was one. He played with Granville. You had Derek White was another. Alan Brown, Niall Harris, and probably the most underrated player I probably came across in my time, which was Billy Tynan. Billy, was a real true clubman, could have played with anybody, and played his whole career through, with Granville. But what a player he was! But with fantastic memories, training under one floodlight in Childers Road. The O'Neills trained us, so it was great, fantastic memories, and really was a very good foundation. We had Jerry Duggan coming in at that time, who was staunch Limerick FC, and who I would have said was a really good role model to have at the time where I looked up. Limerick was at its best at the time, and he'd been playing against Real Madrid and all those clubs. So you always had a full crew training, all the kids were training. But great memories, and I always say you always remember your first manager, and Billy for me was really the first step in the ladder for me. And what a guy, what a legend.
Yeah, absolutely. I know he's still heavily involved with Granville in terms of watching the matches, and a real staunch supporter, Declan, as well. A lot of the younger people maybe listening wouldn't know that, Granville, obviously, as you said, played in the old area where now the Dunstores and Childers Road is, and in that area, it wasn't as built up back then. It's probably a source of pride for everyone that was there to see the new setup now that Granville have. Obviously, you have your 2 pitches and dressing room area at the back of Glenbrook, and it's come on a bundle in that way.
Yeah, look, and after my time, who carried it on was John O'Neill, who, given his lifetime. And I always said to any of the coaches and parents who are coaching and helping out in clubs, time is something you don't get back. And he'd given so much time. The volume of players coming in out of Granville was huge. Liam Kennedy is there, and Vincent Coffey, have to give him a mention as well. So they carried on the role, and you know what? It was always open to everybody. As I said, it was houses, population was fairly small. Glenbrook came into it as well, so schoolboys started growing every year. But to see what they have now, I know it was a close call. They nearly went out of football at one stage, but it would have been a complete disaster. A lot of memories in that club, and international players in that club as well. So I'm delighted for them, and long may it last.
Yeah, absolutely. You also were in school up the road, Declan, secondary school in St. Enda's as well. It was in terms of the players that produced around your time as well. There was a lot of players produced for particularly League of Ireland as well. It was obviously a good schooling for you in both sport and in school, I suppose.
Yeah, look, St. Enda's at the time was a fantastic school. Some great players, as you mentioned, the League of Ireland. Mike Kerley was there, Albert Finnan, two fantastic players. And I remember starting school at the time. I was 12, walking to school, and their 2 Irish jerseys were up on the wall. And every time I passed, everyone would be staring up and looking. And those 2 became really good role models. Having years after having to play with Limerick with both of them was an absolute pleasure. Two fantastic players, but you also had Jason Purcell was there. When he was in the same class as me. I don't know, one of us were as bad as the other in school, but he was definitely a player I have to say I admired through the years, and always carried himself really, really well. He's still in the game now, still producing the goods, and looks like probably like a, doesn't say much, like a gentle figure, but you know, he was well able to use himself on the pitch. And another one was Alan Rice, Bobo Rice, who both Jason and Bobo had played in an FAI final, cup final with Fairview and Dalymount. Alan had a sweet left foot, a great player as well. So, you know, we were probably in around, you know, it was a couple of years in the difference of us, but, you know, it was an absolute pleasure to play with that level of player. We didn't really, you know, there wasn't a lot of computers or technology that was there at that time. We were very much street soccer players, and soccer was really a survival for us in St. Enda's. And you know what, it'd be unfair to leave out, you know, your grandmum as well, Kitty Finnan, who always encouraged us, and Rita Mullins, who you know, it's probably spoiled us all, as again in the 80s, wasn't a lot of money back then, and we used to be queuing up at lunchtime, and Kitty would have the bowls of soup, and all the soccer players were always getting the best of grub. And but you know, we owe a lot to those people, and Rita Mullins, we owe an awful lot. And you know, great memories in St. Enda's School. And Tom Maloney, who was the manager at the time, and Martin Wallace, they were really great for the school, and a high population at the time. And it's unfortunately the school is closed.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, Declan, must have been a huge source of pride for yourself when you made the League of Ireland bow yourself. I know you played with Limerick FC. Maybe back then, I don't know if it meant more, or was it because there was less money, but it seemed like, you know, the pride in playing for your city was massive back in those days. You know, it wasn't done for the money. There was no financial gain for you. There was a lot of commitment involved. How was the experience for you there in the mid-90s with Limerick as well?
Yeah, look, it was, I think it was in around 93 I signed for Limerick. I was only 19 at the time. It was, had very little coaching through the years. You know, my first really was Noel King. And, you know, Limerick at the time, we were always struggling. You know, you'd get £50 or £40, £30 or whatever it is. You know, money at that time was never mentioned. It was just one of those things. And we used Noel Handley, you could have this little fiesta, 2-door fiesta. We'd have to go to Finn Harps in it, maybe 4 of us in the car. And no, I never complained. You'd get out and play a match and come home straight away. There was never staying overnight or anything like that. We looked at it probably as different the way things are now. You know, there's overnight stays, sports scientists, physios, and so on. You know, that's there now. Match analysis, it wasn't there when we were there. So, you know, no nutrition or anything like that. We played, you know, it wasn't about the money. It was really about matching yourself up against the best players in the country at the time. And when you came home, you on the way home, you stopped for a burger and chip, and that was it. And you went on. But, you know, we met a lot of friends in up and down the country. And I mentioned Albert there to yourself earlier on. But first, we used to meet at the George and going into the George Hotel. He was the very first person who used to come over to the Limerick lads and, you know, shaking hands and welcome, because there wasn't many of us there that time. You know, Noel was manager. He knew a lot of players in Dublin. So there was a lot of players from Dublin, from there and around the country. I think there was only 7 Limerick-based players at the time, and so it was very strange. It was very peculiar, and but it was a great experience to play against that level of players, to see the difference between junior soccer and League of Ireland.
Yeah, I know that people, obviously you'd have to experience it, and I wouldn't know myself, but obviously that you can see that the divide would be great in terms of League of Ireland and junior. Noel King is known as no shrinking violet either, Declan, when it came to managing teams. I know that from listening to other players that you would have played with as well from the past. What was it like, I suppose, to play under him as a whole? I know it was a great experience, but I know that many people have differing views on Noel over the years.
You know, I understand that. And you know what? People have different views on managers and people in general. That's just the way it is. But look, his record speaks for himself. He was internship manager for 2 games with the Irish senior squad, under 21 international manager, women's senior international, loads of League of Ireland clubs. And I had the privilege to play with him as well. He was coming to an end of his career at the time. And he was a no-nonsense guy. You'd be fooled by his size. You know, when you see him first, he was 5'8", 5'9", and was a tough bit of stuff. Now he was well able to control the dressing rooms. What I did notice about him, if you produce the goods on the pitch, he would do anything for you. So the story the lads would probably say, my debut, I was getting £40 at the time, and it was above and brain. He called me out, and you'd get an envelope after matches, and I was kind of left the last. I was the youngest, and he called me out, and he said, "Look, there's an extra bonus in it for you. Listen, well done." And he was very complimentary. He handed me a bag full of 50p pieces. So when I was counting it on the way back, he'd left me 20 short, So I look back at it, it was about fun for me, and it was never about the money. And there was a lot of guys like that. And Albert was the same. Mike Curley was the same. Ray Holler, and so on. But he was a great guy, and again he managed the top level. So irrelevant what opinions are of him, he was really a very good coach. And the World Cup, by the way, people don't realise that. In 1990 World Cup, he was in the management team.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's still going strong now. I know he's just after being announced a couple of months ago as Shelbourne's women's manager, senior manager, so he's back in the limelight as such. Declan, you obviously went back to junior level after a few years League of Ireland, and obviously when a player goes back from League of Ireland to junior level, there's a lot of expectation, in terms of your performance. You're probably expected to be one of the leaders at junior level as well. You're with Fairview Rangers, probably the most talked about team, as it turns out, that group. In junior football history almost, for the success that you went on to have. I know you won an FAI Junior Cup with the club, and obviously several international caps as well. Was it as good an experience as we all think from the outside to play with that team?
When I went back to junior soccer, I struggled. It took me 7 or 8 games to really get going. You have this kind of thing that you have every right to play. You're going to be the best player. It's very easy to say it, but I was struggling and with form. And I remember Dermot Finnan called me over. He said, "Declan, is there something wrong with you?" I was saying, I didn't know what was wrong, but the bottom line was I thought it was better than what it really was. And when you're coming from League of Ireland and then you come to junior soccer, you actually think you have nothing to do when you just go out and play. But that was Dermot. He his man management skills were top class, and he put a fantastic team together. There was, getting to the final of the FAI was with Fairview. There was an awful lot of pressure on the side because Fairview won it in the 60s, and it was all the talk. The old crew were there and saying, I was comparing teams. But on the day, I think it was Fairview in the panel at 7 or 8 internationals, if not more, internationals on that side. It was a really, really good mixture of players. A lot of the players came from around that area as well. A lot of work had been put into the team throughout the years. And one thing Dermot was very good at signing a player and holding and adding. And, I in the final, if I remember serves right, it was only three players that weren't capped, 3 or maybe 4. And I mean, Colin Fleming for me was man of the match in the final. People talk about the performance. It was an okay kind of a game. There was a lot of pressure on both teams, but Colin Fleming stopped Portmarnock 2 or 3 great chances when it was 0-0, and the games, that's changes games as goals, and I thought he was excellent, and man of the match. He never got capped. There was a lot of good keepers around by then. Derek White for me was a fantastic player at the back, centre half. Still find it very strange why he didn't get an international cap. 29, I think he was maybe 28, 29 playing League of Ireland at the time. His first time playing it, which was an incredible leap. Having played all those years of junior soccer, maybe picking up 1 or 2 bad habits of that, and then going straight into League of Ireland. To be quite honest with you, I think that probably was taken from him. He was an exceptional player, very good alongside Ray Holland and Albert when they played together, as well as Sean Lipper, who was consistent every week. And fantastic players. Trevor Lavelle, great finisher as well. But that team that was fantastic, and when you lost 1 or 2 players, 1 or 2 came in, they still won. Fairview, that wasn't luck. It's just that had a very, very good foundation, very good structure, winning mentality, and Jimmy and Gaga and Trevor Lavelle up front. There's always goals, and that they were fantastic players. That was a fantastic memory. It was probably the first time I kind of realised that. it was benefited me when I went into management because I had an understanding what level you had to get to.
Yeah.
To win those competitions, and I think that was huge for me going forward. Did I appreciate it at the time? I probably didn't. It's now when I look back, I actually had given away my jersey to a lad at the day, on the day, and I asked for it back. I asked for it back when about 2 or 3 years ago, and I had no shame in asking for it back.
Yeah.
But looking back at it now as time goes on, and some of the players that were on display were absolutely fantastic players, and a lot of them went on to play League of Ireland. So it was a great memory. And you know what? Great club. Again, I mentioned him earlier on, Paul O'Donnell. I think, yes, we'd won 1-0, but I think the game was extremely flat until he came on. And in fairness to him, he changed the whole game. And what a player he was now,
Yeah, you mentioned the fact, Declan, that a lot of that team that you played with Fairview had international or Irish junior international caps. Obviously for the standard of soccer in Limerick junior soccer is very high and has been for years. But still, at the end of the day, it's still a massive honour to get capped for Ireland because you don't have a massive magnitude of players from Limerick that get capped even since your time to now. So obviously to be in that bracket is obviously a great achievement.
Yeah, no, look, it was my first cap was, I was 19. My first junior cap was 19, and I had played 30 seconds. That's what I had played, and people didn't realize we're one of the very few countries you have to pass the white line to get a cap. And I was got into the 90th minute, and poor Joe Hannon was a sub the same night. Joe went to speak for himself. He got on several caps after, of course. The referee had a whistle in his mouth to blow up for full time. And my very first junior cap, this was in Falkirk in Scotland. And so the referee just waved me on. So I ran across and we had a throw. And the ball went back to the throw and he went to hoof it long. And in midair, I caught the ball and I handed it to the referee. That was it, game over. He'd blown the whistle in midair. So I actually didn't touch the ball with my feet. I was only 19 at the time. At the time, it was a real privilege that time. I have to say, it was less of the intermediate clubs. Steve McGivern was playing that day. He was 20 years older than me. Played with St. Francis in the final against Bray, Joey Pouch. There were some fantastic players at that day. So it was just an honour for me, even though it was 30 seconds. I was lucky, years later I got my fair share of caps, but it's a fantastic memory at that time at such a young age.
Yeah, you meant in the junior level, you were with Fairview. Eventually you had crossed what we would call the bitter divide to Pike Rovers in junior football, and that rivalry has actually been reignited in the last 2 years, really to a great extent with Fairview's resurgence, somewhat of a resurgent, Declan. But you went in there, you had a very important league win for the club actually in 2005, which seemed to kind of be the kickstart of a really important time and generation now in the club's history. And I know you went on to manage, but even as a player, you started having success around that time as well, and converting as well from left wing to left back as well.
Yeah, well, I had a good mentor in Albert. Again, he was a left fuller. I spoke to him about it. It was a position that I like playing. I love playing in the wing. Just freestyle, go out and play. But I think when you're starting to slow down, left full would have been a prime position for you. But look, the people think that I went from. Everyone thinks that I went from Fairview to Pike, which wasn't the case. I actually went back to Limerick and then left Limerick to go to Pike, but it was still seen as, probably a tough decision. I had a lot of good friends in Pike at the time, and when I started off there, you had Pam Mullally and James O'Grady, who two very professional people. Pam Mullally, league medic with Limerick League of Ireland, knew his football. He was actually educating me, I signed in 2000, 2001. And so I was with him for a long haul. And then Declan Casey entered the frame into the management side. And not only a great player he was, but he actually added to that management team. He was extremely clever, completely football related. To be one of the best left-footed players. His strike of a ball was clean cut. He was excellent all around. But both of them together, was extremely progressive, and their knowledge on what they've done and played in the game at a high level started gaining a small bit of momentum. Fairview were never going to go away. There was no getting away from that, and the rivalry in the games between the two clubs were actually very healthy. You know, it was very, very healthy. It was reason for people to train and get up in the morning times and Sunday mornings and go to matches, and the support and the games used to be packed. It was very good. But I think that was just the momentum coming. Those two guys changed it and made it very easy for me when I took over, because they had a very good foundation.
Yeah, you had a golden generation yourself, Declan. You know, I got the club's only official FAI Junior Cup win 2011 when you beat St Michael's in Turner's Cross, when you were managing with Declan Casey as your assistant, actually, or was it even joint manager? I can't exactly remember.
Well, yeah, no, Declan was there the year before. He was actually doing commentary on the match. He may as well have been on pitch side. He was he was excellent. But Adrian Lipper was the assistant on the day. Had Colin Lipper, who was the bagman, and Eddie Donovan was doing the training as well. I a very, very good management staff and management team. We were all friends, and Adrian Lipper brought something extra. You know, not only were we friends, you know, we worked in the first half together, we were very good friends. He was extremely clever. He could see things live. So in junior soccer back then, didn't really have go back replay or match analysis or halftime. Someone come in with a tablet or an iPod. So you had to see things live, and what I hadn't got there, he did. You know, Adrian Lipper was an extremely clever man, played at very high level as well. So we had all the ingredients. Colin Lipper, huge clubman, great groundsman, kitman, and again Eddie O'Donovan, the history that his family himself in the club. I could see what it meant to those families, the Lippers and the O'Donovans and the Walters.
Yeah.
You know, that was a good start, having that management team.
I suppose after seeing, Fairview, close rivals dominating FAIs, for the club to actually go and get that FAI Junior Cup, as you said, and you obviously had the likes of Eddie O'Donovan involved as well in a playing pitch. You had Owen Hanrahan, you had Gary Neville, a lot of young players coming through in that team that complemented the more experienced players as well, like Keith Hartnett.
Yeah. Look, I still say, people would always ask me, Declan, trying to compare the different sides, and you try to do your best to, but there's really you couldn't compare both. Like everyone had their pluses and minuses, but the Pike Rovers there was a huge amount of pressure on the club at the time. Obviously, Fairview had won a fair share, and Pike having the history that was there, facilities, progressing all the time. I always felt to win it in 2011 after being obviously thrown out of it the year before. It was an arbitration the year before. I think it was the semi-final. Had beaten St Michael's 4-2 after being 2-0 down. Lost players. Obviously the knock-on effect is tough going, and people maybe one or two lost a bit of belief. Brought in players. You had Brian Clear. You had Conor Kavanagh was a fantastic player. John Tierney, Alan Barry, Pam Maloney. So I had, even though the nucleus was there, we started off the season training with 7 or 8 players. So for those players to go on and win an FAI after having that kind of level of disappointment was a huge credit to those players and club. It was fantastic. Again, huge pressure. Just Ger Waters or Jeff Frawley coming into the dressing rooms at the time. He was president. And I'll just give you an indication of what pressure was about. And he came in, and an elderly man, and he just said, "Look, lads, I'd missed a penalty, or I was supposed to take a penalty in the final. I think it was 1950 or the 60s. And he said, I hadn't a bottle to take it, and I gave it to Togsy Kineen, and he missed. He said, every day I think about it, he said, can you put this to bed today?" Oh, so I whistled. I said, "Oh, geez." I said, "That's pressure, and for those people, Michael McCarthy's, and people that it was an elderly following. There was a lot of elderly people there at the time. McPenny's were great. Some of them aren't around today, but I could see that it finalised a lot for those people. And Jeff Frawley passed away not so long after that,
Yeah, I know that. Obviously, you mentioned there that when you joined as a player, that there was obviously a driven management team already, Declan, who were changing things at the club. But I suppose, with Pike, you mentioned there that you had some close calls before and after as well. after you won the FAI Junior Cup. You know, you were constantly maybe getting to quarterfinals and semi-finals. It was kind of would be almost reminiscent of maybe Munster Rugby if you were in the European Cup that never went away after you first got there. But do you look back now and say that I managed to, you know, change that maybe mentality, and I managed to change that attitude in that, you know, after you were there as manager, that the club continually look and strive to win FAIs now all the time?
You know what? You're not the first person to ask that question. I had a great amount of experience behind me at the time. I was a very young manager. I had a great amount of experience at League of Ireland. I had Pamela Ellis, the Dermot Finnans. I had an okay playing career. I enjoyed it. Experienced players, the Ray Hollands, the Tommy Gaynors, Albert Finnan, and I kind of put it together. You know, brought it into management. I was a huge question mark, even myself. I was saying, you know, am I cut out for it? But I put that all together. And on top of that, then, you know, Pike Rovers at the club had a very, very good structure in place, an attractive club. I had a very, very good management team. Plus, and the best one of all was I had a bit of luck. And I went through the teams, you know, beating Fairview 4-2 in the first game. They were holders. People don't talk about Kilmallock. Kilmallock had a very good side. Pike Rovers down to 10 men, scoring in the 80th minute in around that to win 1-0. Quarter-final of the FAI against Athenry away, 2-0 down, going on to win. Semi-final, Sheriff, Pike, we turned away 3-1 lead. Sheriff went into penalties. Sheriff had a penalty to win, missed. We scored and won in penalties. And in the final, we scored in the last minute nearly. So I had a small little bit of luck. People say, you know, that can't be lucky all the time. But I had a very, very good baseline there. You know, and one of those things that everything slots into place with player-wise as well. Brian Cleary, Conor Kavanagh was a huge addition to what I had. John Tierney then was added, and Owen Hannon was coming into the side. So, you know, it's everything all together, you know.
Yeah, there's still a lot of players from your time. Well, a lot. You'd probably have 6 or 7 that are still playing now, Declan, with Pike. Do you think that maybe that group, especially considering how close they came on particularly 2 occasions with Mike Shield in the finals of the FA Cup, do you think they should have had another FAI Junior Cup to cement their maybe stature as a very good team at this level?
Yeah, look, definitely, and I think they'll feel that themselves. I definitely think North End was definitely a game they could have won. Sheriff at the time, you know, they were picking up momentum. As I said, they were every bit as good as the Pike team that I had in the semi-final, and I could see, you know, I said, oh, if they get another few players, that, you know, they're going to take over, and they actually did. But North End was definitely there for the taking. I was at the match, and give credit to North End as well. You know, they were getting the quarterfinals and semi-finals as well. But look, those players will know themselves that they'll be disappointed not of picking up another FAI. The quality that was there, even in the training sessions that I was watching, I had very little work to do. You know, just keep brushing up their. My battle was GA at times. Some of our lads were, you know, half GA. So when do you keep them? When do you rest them? When don't you? When do you know? When are they at their peak? Fatigue, injuries, and so on. So they were the challenges that I had. But you know what? Some of those players are still young enough. It'll all determine where they're going to come back from this pandemic. Are they going in their 30s now, early 30s? Are they going to say, look, it's my time, or are they going to say, look, you know, I've another tale to tell? And I hope they have another tale to tell. They were a fantastic group and brought some fantastic memories to very important people.
Yeah, absolutely. Declan, since you've left Pike, obviously you've been involved in various different roles at clubs. I know you have the FAI Regional Development Officer role as well. And how is that role going for you, and how are you finding the job?
Excellent. Look, you know, I consider myself really lucky. I've worked several places, you know, as a young man, and I was a postman for years, and my dad was a postman, and I soccer was really what I loved since I was 6. I have to say I never really took a break from the game. I never stopped enjoying it, and while that keeps going, I'll keep going. And there's always new ventures and projects there, and you know, that are really attractive, and so it's great, and again, once you're in the football industry and you're learning all the time, I haven't lost the appetite.
Yeah, not to mention as well, you also have two very, we'll say, ongoing roles with two separate clubs, but we'll start maybe with your role with Athlone Town, which people would probably were mostly brought aware of when you reached the semi-final of the FAI Cup against Dundalk, when you had a lot of well-wishers at the time. Now obviously we might not talk about the result that much. You came up against a colossus on the day in Dundalk. It just showed there's such a difference in First Division and Premier Division level, especially the top of the Premier Division, top 2 or 3 teams. But obviously, that was a great experience in getting there. And can you maybe expand a bit more on your role? I know as well that you have you're doing a PhD in physiology as well, so you're certainly keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, you know what? I did a master's degree in sports science, and it was very strange for me because I had to be dragged to go to school, So, so I just said, you know what, let's try something different. I was always open to that, and as it worked out, DCU offered me, a role in one of the courses in physiology. So it was just really a no-brainer for me. Siobhan O'Connor is my tutor, along with Enda White, and I have 2 fantastic coaches here, not soccer-wise, but tutors that helped me along, and Barry Watton is one, and John McDonough from Mary I, who's fantastic. And so all that education and all that use, I'm doing S&C, strength and conditioning training in Athlone Town, which is great. Great to see what way different clubs work up the country, in the Midlands and things like that. There's a huge amount of continuity within the Athlone Town. I have to say it's been a great experience for me. And again, a learning curve. Adrian Carberry, fantastic. He was a very good player for Athlone, home-based lad as well. He's heart in his sleeve, and so I'm learning all the time. Mickey O'Connor, ex Athlone player, Rovers player, Turlock O'Connor's brother, they'll be fantastic soccer people, and you're learning from those people all the time. And one thing I did notice, that losing isn't the end of the world. Like that there is. You take the positives out, you learn from it, try add to it, and obviously the budget wouldn't be anyone near the Dundalks, the Bows, or even in the First Division and so on. And so you roll up the sleeves and you make best of what you have. But the biggest plus that Athlone have is the level of continuity within the club. And I noticed when you're outside that gate, you're going to get a game like they took 5 points off Drogheda, beating Shelburne in the cup. They were awarded 25,000 for getting to the quarterfinal of the FAI Senior Cup. So beating some teams, and obviously the Dundalk, just before we went out into the pitch, I kind of looked at the physicality, the Dundalk team, and we 4 young lads going to school the following day, and I was a bit worried. They were just, they were professional, but they were playing the Europa League the week before, and just check the history there. It's fantastic. But look, it's great.
Yeah, with your current role with Athlone, you'll probably be looking at the fixture release next Monday with bated breath, probably on 2 fronts, Declan, because we're in a bit of limbo here in Limerick, as you well know, like with the current Treaty United situation. We're waiting to see will the club receive a First Division licence. It also doesn't help Athlone really, like next week, because there's apparently plans to bring out a 9-team fixture list. And to leave one team, it just seems to be a bit of a mess right now, and it looks like it could be February 23rd before Treaty find out whether they'll actually be accepted into the league as well.
Like that, really, let's be honest, that probably gives Treaty very little chance to get organised. Like, look, this isn't something where you gather up people together, get them on forms and get them out to the pitch. Yeah. The preparation is incredible, from getting your staff and getting prepared, fitness levels are right. Because I didn't know that what I do know now is that a player has to have a really good standard coming into a League of Ireland. Like, you could be still the best junior soccer player, doesn't mean you're cut out for League of Ireland. They train 4 nights a week. They do a recovery the 5th. They rest for 2 days. And some of these guys are working as well. So that is a huge commitment. So if you're not committed first, forget it. So, my sympathies to Treaty United, because that's tough. And Limerick have a huge tradition. Limerick City itself have a huge tradition of athletes at all levels. And, they deserve to have a team at that and at least start a good baseline and without any pressure. Obviously, financially through the years, it was struggling. And even in my time, it was always seemed to have been struggling and things like that. It'd be great to see on par, because whoever the manager is, whether it's Tommy Barrett, and I hope it is, definitely deserves a crack at that in a healthy position. But you know what, Treaty, there's good people there on the board, very professional people on the board, and they're adamant they're doing their best to get in, and I wish them all the best. I think deserve that.
Yeah, and on a different note, obviously I know you were heavily involved with Regional United as well, Declan, and actually included in a couple of match cards I noticed as well as a substitute. But we'll say the future of the junior season, that's another probably issue which we won't find out fully about until the next couple of months. But obviously we heard Christy O'Dwyer last week, and he said it looks very unlikely. Their plan originally was maybe to get teams back training in March and then maybe get back on the field in April. And he obviously mentioned that looks highly unlikely at this stage. Do you think the priority should be that when we do return, whether that be May, June, April, that we finish the current season, even if it's just the league? Or do you think that maybe we should start afresh if it does go into those months?
I personally think you should start early. Start early. A new season, start early. Maybe August or whatever. Look, it's been a tough year for everyone involved, and obviously, fellas won't be fit, getting back, injuries and so on, and people are working from home, and I wouldn't rush something. Soccer is very precious here in Limerick. We have a fantastic tradition. It's showcased all the time. Yourself, Pat Sheehan, Mike Aaron showcase it. So many people involved in the game, given so much time. They deserve to start with an even right across the board. And I think going in now and rushing it, I'm not too sure whether that be the right idea or not. Like for me, starting fresh for me is the right move. People will have a different opinion in that, but we've been too long out now. You're stopping and starting and unsure when is it going to stop, or is it going to be delayed and so on. It'd be great to start fresh, and everyone, if soccer needs to come back, sport needs to come back, and supporters need to get out there, and kids need to get back playing. So important for the next generation.
Absolutely, and to be honest, even looking at it from the point of view of the area you're in now, in terms of strength and conditioning, Declan, as well, the fact that we have been out really since October. I mean, it could be 7 months before we've by the gap of when we finished to the fact that we're playing again. It could be longer even. I mean, you're going to take longer than your usual pre-season probably to get people right now. With no gyms open, people only doing jogs really in the road, trying it hard to keep fit as well.
Yeah, look, another thing as well, Adrian, you make a very good point there, that if you go in and rush it as well, if you go in and suddenly you're not doing 90% months, suddenly you're into a pre-season where you're running laps. Some clubs will do laps, and it's a tough regime pre-season. You are going to pick up injuries. You're as well off just starting nice and slow, breaking in there and getting your body going again, healthy diet, and again, it's been a tough year, but that decision is very, very important, and especially what direction it's going to go. Is there going to be any real value on someone picking up a trophy now, playing Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday? I'm not too sure. And again, if someone gets COVID, if there's one mistake or one slip up, you're back to square one.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe on a final note, Declan, I know that even though you were involved in coaching for many years, you never really gave up playing at all. I know you were involved with Southend United, where you won a 2A league. Obviously at Rhodes as well with Brescia. You were back with Granville too, and had time with Bala as well. So would you say that you can finally say you're fully retired from playing, or are you still involved?
No, no. You know what? You're kicking and hitting every ball, but I have had a good time. I never had any. I was lucky enough to have any injuries go on, and I actually played my last game, funny enough, with Regional United, and I suppose not harping on about it, still sticks with me that the arbitration for Regional United was tough to take it to the semi-final. of the FAI was massive. You know, Tom O'Connell, Seamus there, and Gordon Cowper. You know, they were Jason Scanlon put so much work into it, and it just wasn't meant to be. And look, I won't say community, they're a very competitive club, and it took a while to regroup. But with regards to Southend, you know, Southend and Brescia, I won 2 leagues with them. I won the B League in Brescia. Some great characters and community-based team, and there was no going from door to door. I was just training and playing as much as I can. Like they had in one day their full squad of players, which were neighbours, all neighbour-based, and great community, fantastic memories there, going out to the Desmond League, playing in some tough places, I can tell you. But look, I'd have to give Southend a mention. I have to say that 2-way winning the 2-way league, you had Buller Walsh, Benny Grant and Ten Moynihan, who are absolutely true legends to me, and can't leave out the manager, Ross Grant. You know, Ross was the manager. He trained the team, cut the grass, hung the nets, lined the field on his own. So you know, that taught me a thing or two, is that how lucky I really was, you know, having such a staff around, structure in the club. And so hats off to those 2 teams. You know, they were great memories, and people don't realise they were a real learning curve for me. You know, what people really do for the game, and probably don't get any credit. You know, I've never heard of Ross Grant being up there, and that's where he should be. He's upcoming coach if he sticks at it, and because look, that was his baseline, and winning a few trophies. And look, I wish them all the best.
Yeah, I must say thanks very much, Declan. It's been an enlightening chat. We've had a great chat here, and reminiscing on your career as coach manager. And as I said, you're not done yet. You're in every sort of yeah, absolutely. We have plenty of involvement there for you, and obviously we wish you the best of luck with that loan. And if Treaty come back in, the only time we hope you drop points is against Treaty. But
but I won't say I won't mind that. But look, again, Adrian, you know, I wish them well. You know, I wish them well. That's so important that they get that going again and structure through the club, and the right people are in place.